You're watching HCAM TV. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Hopkinton Hangout Hour. I am your host for this afternoon, Matt Clark. And today we're going to be bringing you a special edition of Geek Week, which is my HCAM original show where I like to bring you everything geeky and nerdy that's happening in pop culture. Today we have a new segment that I call the Geekly Update. And many of you probably don't know that one of the hottest video games right now is a multiplayer game called Among Us. This game is popular for many reasons, and we'll get to those. But joining me today is my good friend, Will Blanchette. So hello, Will.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, of course. So, Will, the reason
Matt, your mic cut out for me at least.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yep, there you go.
Okay, good. Stupid headset. The reason I asked you, Will, is for two reasons. One, you probably play Among Us more than anyone else that I know personally. You're quite good at the game. And also, until this year, you were a middle school teacher.
This is true.
Which is the demographic that this game is
eighth grade social studies teacher for 2 years.
The demographic that this game is very popular with right now. So do you want to go ahead and talk to the audience a little bit about, like what this game is?
Yeah, absolutely. So Among Us is a cooperative sort of game for 4 to 10 people. It's available on PC and on iOS. I would say that's probably one of the reasons it's so popular is because it's a free game on the iPhone. So in it, you and your friends play as little crewmates on a spaceship, and most of you are crewmates. Your goal is to do tasks around the spaceship so the spaceship runs well, and if everyone finishes their tasks in time, the crewmates win. The kind of twist is that some of the people playing are not actually crewmates, they're imposters. And if you're an imposter, the aim of the game is to kill off all of the crewmates. So the game becomes, if you're a crewmate, trying to do your tasks as quickly as possible and trying to figure out who the imposters are, while the imposters are trying to kill off the crewmates and avoid getting caught.
Yeah, that sounds like the gist of it. And the reason I wanted to talk about this game, other than the fact that it's one of the biggest game right now, a lot of streamers play it online, it gets a lot of views, is because I've seen that there's actually a little bit of controversy around this game because some people, especially parents, don't like the idea that their kids are playing a game where they have to kill their friends.
I think that's fair. I mean, it certainly has a significant demographic of players if you're playing online with strangers, which I personally don't usually do.
Yeah, me either.
Because it is a free app, you do get a lot of it. It skews a little bit younger, so I can understand like some trepidation on the part of parents. Although to be fair to the game, it is fairly like cartoony. There's no blood. There's not a lot of real violence. A couple like cartoon depictions, but nothing worse than say you'd see in a Looney Tunes cartoon.
Yeah, my thoughts exactly. And that's why I wanted to talk about that, because I'm a firm believer in things like video games are not harmful in the ways that media often depicts them as, and anything I can do to assuage those anxieties or fears surrounding popular things like Among Us, which is a game that I very much love. I played it for many hours last night, in fact, with both our group and also my college friends. As soon as we were done, called me up and was like, "Hey, Matt, you want to play?" And I was like, "Absolutely." So anything I can do to assuage those fears of something that I truly believe is harmless,
Yeah.
I want to do that.
Yeah, I would say that like in terms of violence, the game is fairly tame. Like obviously one of the thematic components is imposters killing crewmates, but like the actual things that are shown on screen are fairly tame. I would say that I can't really speak to the online experience as much because how I tend to play is with people I know, and that's how I recommend people play in general. I think that's the best way to enjoy the game,
That's fair.
uh, is by, keeping it with a circle of friends, kind of like you would with a board game. And if that's something that uh, people are doing, that's probably going to result in a better experience. But generally, I think it's a fairly uh, banal experience. Like I don't think it's overly sensitive in that way.
So if you were still a teacher and you overheard some of your students talking about this game, you wouldn't be overly concerned
No, I mean,
as
yeah,
long as they weren't talking during class.
I mean, it's honestly, it's a game that encourages creative problem solving and cooperation. Um, I
And
wouldn't
deductive
find it
reasoning.
concerning. My partner is an elementary school teacher. Some of her kids play it. Um, they seem well adjusted, so I think that overall, it is a game that has like a demographic that skews younger, but I don't think that's really all that problematic. In the same way that kind of like Fortnite, I think has a similar kind of audience. Um, and I would say that this is probably even like on a comparing it to Fortnite, I would say that Among Us is probably a little more tame, or like more. It has a cartoonier feel to it, so on kind of that scale, it falls on the safer side.
That's fair. And for you, Will, what is the appeal of a game like this to you?
I mean, in some ways I think one of the appeals of it is I really like board games in my day to day life. But with the state of the world being what it is, we're all kind of out of luck for board games at the moment, just because
Mm-hmm.
seeing people face to face is tough. But it feels like a lot of board games that I like. Things like Betrayal at the House on the Hill is like a good example, I think,
Oh yeah.
uh, where it's kind of like a social deduction game, or like a game like I'm blanking on it, but it's a social deduction game where you have people working uh, towards different goals without those goals being
Resistance.
public. Yeah, resistance. That's the one. Thank you. Uh, and I like that aspect of it. It's also a nice way to get to see and talk to my friends, which I enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's kind of the gist of where I fall on it.
And that's one of the interesting things about this game, Among Us, is that most games when they're like the hot game, like Fall Guys is another one, which is a completely different game, and we're not going to get into that right now. That game is brand new; it just came out this year. Among Us came out 2 years ago, and I believe that one of the reasons it's so popular right now is because we're all socially isolated, and I believe that Among Us is a game that is actually best played away from your friends.
I think that makes sense, especially because while you're playing, there's kind of two separate parts to the game. There's kind of a negotiation phase and doing tasks phase. And while you're doing tasks, the game recommends that everyone be quiet. So that means turning off your mic if you're talking to somebody online, and it turns off the chat functionality. And then there's like the communal meeting element where you try and figure out who the imposters are. So in that way, it's actually a positive to be in a different room than other people, because I know for me, I have an easier time playing the imposter when I'm not face to face with people.
That's
Uh,
that's very
you
true.
know,
Me too.
I'm not very good at lying, which I don't think is a bad thing about me, but does make playing a game like this face to face kind of hard. And so, when you've got like a screen between you and the other person, it makes the game a little more even handed, I guess.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think for me, I don't like to play the imposter. I've played the imposters successfully plenty of times, but I much prefer the deductive reasoning aspect of it. Strangely, when I play with my college friends, they tend not to play it with mics muted when we're not in negotiations. No one gives anything away. It's just like general banter, and that is weird to me, especially since I still try to be silent so I don't give anything away by accident. And everyone's like, "Oh, Matt, you were really quiet during that." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's how you're supposed to play it."
Yeah, I mean, I
Um,
think it's an interesting game because it really does kind of it depend like how it's played really depends on who is playing it, because there is so much strategy that goes into it. So if you're playing with close friends who you know really well, you're going to have a different experience than if you're playing online with people that you don't know,
mhm.
which I think is an interesting uh, dynamic that it has, uh, where different people play the different roles differently, and so they make different decisions based on kind of their experiences and how they think about things, and so that's something that I think makes the game really replayable. Is if I'm playing with one group of friends, I know that certain things are true, and then if I'm playing with other friends, then I know that certain other things are true, and so that makes it kind of a really variable experience in a way that I think is nice.
Yeah, that's good. I just want to take the time to remind everyone that we are accepting comments or in questions. So if you have anything you want to ask us, feel free to leave it in the comments, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Um, so Will, like I said, you probably play this more than anyone else I know. Do you have any good, particularly good stories from the game?
Um, I don't know. It's kind of a tough game to describe to outsiders. I think that
That's fair.
the biggest shame, the funniest thing is when you play with certain people a lot, you kind of learn things that they do. So with one group of friends, I've got one particular friend who, as the imposter, likes to sabotage things a lot. That's a thing that the imposter can do. They can lock doors. They can they create disasters that like you have to solve, or else you lose the game if you're a crewmate. And so one thing that's kind of happened as we've played more and more is one person starts playing the imposter a certain way, and then you figure that out and you say, oh, well, these things are happening in the game. And that leads me to believe that this person is the imposter. And what happens is that people will emulate that to try and throw people off. So it's kind of interesting because as you play it, you kind of get to watch the way the game works evolve, which I think is really interesting. I'm somebody who likes strategy in games a lot, and so that's something that's fun to see.
Yeah, that's really good. I think my favorite story, and this one involves you, so I'm sorry to bring it up.
All right.
It was like the first time we played, and I think it was the first time in that session at least that you got to be the imposter, and it was a very quick round because you killed one of the crew members. There was a group of three that had all been together, so it couldn't have been any of them, and that left me and you and one of our other friends as the imposter. Our other friend Sam, who viewers should know, I've had him on a few times, said like, "Oh, it's not me. I've been doing this one task that you have to wait a minute for." And I said, "Sam, you know you can leave that, go do something else, and come back to it later." And he goes, "What? You can?" And I immediately go, "Okay, so it's not Sam. That must mean it's Will then." And everyone believed me, and everyone instantly voted you out, and
I
we won.
mean, you were right too.
Yeah.
I was the imposter there.
Now, admittedly, not the greatest strategy because I could have been lying to the group of three.
Yeah, although it's interesting that when things happen like that, usually what happens if you follow that to kind of its conclusion is the imposter loses no matter what, because the right
Yes.
thing to do is if I hadn't been the imposter would be for them to vote you out.
Mhm.
And then logically one of us would have had to be it.
Yep.
Um,
I was
and
actually in that
that's one
same.
of the things you learn, you know, by kind of trial by
Yeah.
fire is you try it and it doesn't work and then you try again.
Yeah. That's a situation I was in last night and have seen plenty of times. Like you kill someone, you you head away, and just the direction you're going, another crew member is coming at the opposite way. They see the body, they see you just leaving the body, and they go, oh, they must have killed that person. Matt must have killed that guy. So they report the body. We go to negotiation, and they go, hey, I just saw Matt walking away from a body. And so the most common thing people think to do is say, no, I saw you near the body. And that creates a bad situation for the killer, no matter what, unless the killer is really smart and can think of something that, like, a way out of it. Like, I actually got out of that yesterday by someone was saying, like, oh, you were coming from, and I was like, what? No, I was looking at my map while I was walking. If that was there, I truly didn't see it, and I got away with that. But in the other scenario, the case that normally happens is, and this also happened to me, I was accused of coming across a body, and I got voted out. And I said, okay, it's fine that you're voting me out. Just know that when you know it's not me, because they would know it's not me when I got ejected and the game didn't end, you have to vote out that other person because it's clearly them. So it's like, yeah, like you said, it's a situation you got to learn. It's not the best situation to be in, no matter what.
Yeah.
But one of the things I really like about this game, you mentioned a lot of other deductive reasoning games like Resistance or One Night Ultimate Werewolf. I like those games. I tend not to love them, though, at least in small groups, because if someone knows the game well, it can easily be, they can figure out the math and solve the and win like 100% of the time, and that makes it not fun. So one of the things I like about Among Us is that it's not the case in that. There's a lot of other factors, and that makes it much more interesting than just, oh, if this was true and that was true, then that means this is true, so Matt's the imposter. It's not like that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would disagree with you about, like, I mean, that's something that I really enjoy about games like Resistance.
Yes,
But
you
we
and
can
some of
agree
our
we
other
can we
friends.
can agree to disagree on that.
We absolutely can.
I think
That
another
is
thing
my
that's
take.
nice about Among Us is that there are definitely some games. I think Fortnite or like Fall Guys would be good examples of this, where like if you lose, you're just out, and that's fine. That's kind of a game decision that those games make, and I think that you like it or you don't.
It's something that I'm typically not a fan of, but I do like Fall Guys.
What's kind of nice, honestly, about Among Us is that if you die really early, if you're a crewmate, your life becomes really easy, because then you just kind of have like a 5-minute zone of very zen, just like, I have to go do my tasks, and now I can float through walls because I'm a ghost. And so that makes it.
Yeah,
it's
you can still play.
Yeah, it's not it. Sometimes it can feel bad, but usually it's honestly fine. It also leads to the interesting commiseration between different people who have died in the chat, because when you're in chat, you can see what the people who are alive are saying, and you have your separate ghost chat, and so you can talk about how you were killed by whoever it was, and of course, like, the ghosts know because they've all been killed, and so you can watch the negotiations happen, and you can watch people either win or lose the game, and I think that's really interesting too. Is if somebody's
I
lying
also
really
love
successfully, you watch it and you're like, oh no, they're gonna believe this, or alternatively they kind of like go through the logic steps of like, so I was with this person was with this person, and that means XYZ. So I think that's really neat.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the game gets to its worst when and this is a pretty good, pretty fun situation to still be in. It's just can sometimes be frustrating depending on how you feel about this sort of thing. If you're the ghost and you're listening to your team just absolutely screw themselves, like they're believing everything the imposters are saying. They are only suspecting their other crewmates. You're definitely going to lose. And like, it's so frustrating. It can be funny sometimes because sometimes you're just in a game where like there's three people left. One of them's an imposter. You're all alive, and you have to figure out who the imposter is in this vote. And sometimes you just got to, at least for me, I got to say, like, you know what, I'm going to vote for this person. But if it's you, Will, if you're the imposter, then, you know, GG, you played an amazing game. And that's how it goes sometimes.
Yeah, there are definitely situations where that's the case, where it's like you're 80% of the way sure that things are going to go one way. But there's also that 20% chance that maybe you're just completely off the mark. And I've had it go both ways. And it's,
Mm-hmm.
you take those risks.
Yep. You know, that's another thing that I really like about this game, because I'm a very competitive person. I do a lot to suppress it because I absolutely hate it about myself. I'm the kind of person who will get angry and incredibly frustrated when I start to lose. And it's something that I very much have to manage about myself. I think I'm very good at it from over the years, but that's a different point entirely. This game does not trigger that in me. I don't know what it is about it. It just, even when you lose, it just still feels good.
Well, I think
And that's
it's
incredibly
partially
refreshing.
just the repetition aspect of it is like, you lose, but it's a 5-minute game or like a 10-minute game at most. So, you know, if you're the imposter and you get caught immediately, well, whatever. There's going to be another game, and if you die, then it's okay. This game will also be over in 5 to 10 minutes, and then you get to
Yeah.
try again. So in that way, it really doesn't punish you very much. Like you get a win or lose screen, but I don't know. It doesn't feel the same to me as like getting through 30 minutes of something and like it not working out.
You know, yeah, that's a very good point. So we have a few minutes left. Let's switch topics just a little bit, Will. Some of those other games that we mentioned, like Resistance, how do those differ in your opinion to Among Us?
So Resistance is kind of similar. So
More
in
of like a
Resist,
cardboard game.
yeah, it's a card game or a board game. I guess depends on your definition. I would say it's a card. I'd say it's a board game.
Oh, in fact, I
Uh,
actually have it right here. Resistance.
so Resistance is a game. It's for 5 to 10 people, um, where some people are members of the Resistance and some people are spies. Um, how it works is that people go on missions. If you are Resistance members, you pass those missions. If you are spies, you fail those missions. Um, and if enough missions fail, the spies win. If enough missions pass, the Resistance wins. I think it's a fun game. I really like it. Um, Unlike Among Us, I would say that it's much more direct. It's basically just the negotiation phase of Among Us in a way
Mm-hmm.
where you have to decide who's going to go on missions. And so if you are the person who's deciding who goes on missions, you have to make a decision really quickly about who do I trust, who do I not trust. Um, so in that way, you get a lot closer into, I know some number of these 3 people or 4 people is a spy, and so I can't trust some amount of them. So it's a little more into the decisions of it, where especially towards the end of the game, you really do have to say, like, of the 5 of us, these 2 people are spies, the 3 of us are safe. Um, so that makes it a little bit harder as a Resistance member, because if you're a crewmate in Among Us, there's always kind of the default to, you can always choose if you want, and if you think that's the best move, you can always say, okay, let's not vote, let's just try and get our tasks done as quickly as possible, because if we get our tasks done, then we win. So there's kind of that like race against the clock aspect of it, is like, if I and the other crewmates that are alive can stay together for long enough, we can win that way. Whereas Resistance, I think, is a little bit more in the minutia of how did like prior events go, and how does that affect my decisions now. um, I mean, I think I like both. They're certainly different experiences.
Very different.
I think werewolf is kind of, I would say it tends to be a little bit more along the lines of resistance, where there is a lot of you need to figure out who the werewolves are and you need to figure out who is safe. Uh, so again, those tend to lean a little bit harder on the actual negotiation phase, which you like, you don't, which I think is fine. I like those games. Yeah, Alex.
Yes, Alex is here for our second edition, which we're going to get into in a minute, where we're going to be talking about recent updates in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, a common topic on Geek Week. But we still have a few more minutes here. So, Will, what would you say to someone who is watching our show and they think that this game is interesting? How would they go about checking it out?
So there's two different versions of it. They can play together though.
Which
So
is rare
if
for
you're
games.
if you're really on the fence, there's an ad-supported free version on iOS. I believe it's in the App Store. I have not myself downloaded it.
Also on
Uh,
Google Play.
oh, I didn't know it was on Android. Cool. Yeah, so it's a free app. You can download it. It's ad supported. So if you don't like ads, then maybe avoid it. But the paid version is $5. So it's a fairly minimal investment either way. It's for PC. I believe it also works for Mac, but I can't confirm that. So you'd have to do your own research
Yeah,
for that.
I'm not sure on that either.
So yeah, you
I
can.
also
Oh, go ahead.
I just want to add that it's available on Steam, which is a free game hosting program. So
Yeah, so you can buy it on Steam for $5. You can buy it on the App Store, the App Store, or the Google Play Store for free. And there's also a paid version if you really wouldn't rather not have ads. Um, what I would suggest, just because I think that personally it's the best experience, is to get like a group of 5 to 10 friends and play with friends. But you definitely can play online with strangers. Uh, I have played a little bit online. Uh, Generally, it's a pretty good experience. I can't speak to it as much, and I do think that being able to use voice chat with friends, which is something that you can do using outside programs like Discord or a phone call or Zoom. Uh, I think that makes the game a lot better. But if that's not something that you want to do or is not something that you have access to, then the free version works really well as well.
awesome. Well, thank you so much, Will. I'm gonna cut it just a little bit short, and I'm gonna give a an HCAM insider, just what's coming up later on the week. But I wanna thank you for coming on to the show and just giving us insight into this game. Once again, this game is called Among Us. It's available for free on iPhone and Google Play Store, and available for $5 on Steam if anyone is interested in playing. We're not sponsored, but I would recommend the game if the idea of social deduction or murdering all your friends is something that appeals to you. So once again, thank you, Will.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And so, as I said, next coming up, we have Alex Kershey on to talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Will, you can feel free to stick around for that if you want to, or you can get going. Whatever is fine. But before we get to that, I just want to give everyone a brief update on what's coming up this week on HCAM. So coming up tonight at 7 p.m., we have a zoning advisory committee meeting on HCAM TV and YouTube. Tomorrow, we have no live program scheduled, but we do have an HCAM binge block where we're going to be looking at some of the games for the 2018 football season. On Wednesday at 3 p.m., we have HCAM Sports Talk hosted by Tom Nappy, live as always, followed by another edition of the Hopkinton Hangout Hour at 7 p.m. On Thursday, we have another HCAM binge block at 3 p.m., where we're going to be taking a look at the 2018 lacrosse season, followed by HCAM News Live on HCAM TV at 6:30, followed by the Hopkinton School Committee meeting at 7 p.m. And if you're a member of HCAM, we will also be having our HCAM annual meeting Thursday night. So absolutely look into joining the fun on that. And it is 2:30. So let's move on to our second edition of the show, our second Geekly update. And I'd like to welcome our usual guest for our Marvel movie talks, Alex Kershey. Alex, thank you so much for joining.
Hello. Thank you for
So
having me.
yeah, no problem. Unfortunately, Sam is our other usual MCU guest, but he is a teacher and he is working in the afternoon, so he couldn't be here. But thank you anyways for showing up.
Yeah, of course.
So I thought it was about time we got to another discussion on Marvel movies because it's been quite a few months since the last Hangout Hour where we talked about them, and in that few months, there's been a lot of updates, a lot of good news, some bad news as well, and we'll get to all of that. But I think the biggest one and the ones we should talk about first is that the schedule has continually changed over the last month. More films have been pushed back because theaters are still not reopening. The first one, of course, being Black Widow, which it was supposed to come out in May. And then I believe it was pushed back to November. But then it was pushed back even further to, I don't even know when, Alex, off the top of your head, do you know when it was supposed to come out?
What is supposed to come out?
Black Widow.
Oh,
Now,
Black
do you know
Widow
when
is
it
supposed to come out next year in a vague sense now, I think.
Oh no, it does have a date. It's supposed to come out May 7th,
I was gonna say it had to be May. I knew it was gonna be May.
which is when the fifth movie of this phase was supposed to be coming out in an alternate universe where, the world didn't end.
I think what's frustrating about it is that I mean the movie's done. The movie's been done for months.
Mhm.
And they intended to put it on. There was some discussion, I think, internally about the possibility of putting it on Disney Plus because Disney Plus has had a bunch of they put a bunch of movies that were supposed to come out in theaters onto Disney Plus, and they started doing this thing where with a movie that I won't mention, they decided to charge $30 for people that already owned the platform to watch it. But then, like, what's weird is I think it was $30 for a one-time watch. But then, like,
I hope not.
the
I
idea
hope
was
you
that
at
you have
least
like
buy
a
it.
party. I don't know how the purchase for that thing works. So my point is they had something in place, but I think because there is some kind of like okay, as carefully as I can, because as an organization, Disney has an internally driven obligation to make as much money and to set as many records with that franchise as possible. They've decided, I think, no, we'd rather delay the movies, drum up anticipation, and make it so that they make tons and tons and tons of monies when theaters reopen. Because theaters are technically reopened now in some places, in some theaters. But you know, I think I hesitate about all of this because, like, all right, very simply, they should, like, I think that they're making a mistake to delay the movies that are already completed until theaters are reopened because there's no realistic timeline available as to when theaters are going to be broad scale reopened to the point to which people are going to be willing to go out and see the movies.
Mm-hmm.
And if Disney is going to insist on releasing it on May 7th or whatever, like that's the final time they're going to delay it, then fine. But the point is, things are now outpacing when they were intended to be seen. So, like, we have television shows in the Marvel Cinematic Universe coming out to Disney Plus soon that were intended to be watched after movies that now are not going to air until next year. And even if those television shows don't like spoil the plots of, say, a Black Widow or say an Eternals, there still was an intended release cycle that Disney has decided to eschew in favor of having their movies be released in theaters. And I don't understand the logic behind it. I think that there's a parabolic equation where I think we've already passed the apex of how much the delays were causing people to anticipate the movies. I think that the final delay that was a possible delay from an anticipatory perspective was November. And I don't think that people are going to forget or not care about a movie that they've been seeing trailers for a year and a half, if there's somebody other than me. I think people are not going to change that anticipation like significantly. Like I don't think that people who are excited about the movie aren't going to go see it in May. But you know what I mean? Like
No, I know.
like there's it's too much of a buildup. It's too much of a delay.
I mean, I can at least say I won't give any specifics because I know you don't want to know certain things. Yeah. I will say we know that some of the Disney Plus shows and some of the movies are connected. We know that definitively. But the order that they were always supposed to come out in is still consistent, at least. Like the first show that's going to be coming out is The Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
I thought WandaVision was first.
No, I believe that's second, but is still coming out relatively.
Are they coming out at the same time?
Well, actually, come to think of it, I thought
because Falcon and the Winter Soldier was supposed to be out already.
It was supposed to be out in September. Yeah, you're right. Because that was confirmed.
Apparently, it was originally supposed to be out in August, and now we have no real release day. Oh, it's coming out in 2021, whereas WandaVision still comes out this year.
Oh. Well, I think that's still largely fine. My point being, if there was no pandemic and these movies just came out when they were originally scheduled, we would have two new movies at this point. We'd have Black Widow, as we discussed, and we would have The Eternals, which are both still coming out. And because the release schedule when they were first announced was Black Widow in May of this year, Eternals in, I believe, July, maybe August. Shang Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings in February, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness in May, and then Thor: Love and Thunder in November. All three
next year.
All three of those were supposed to be next year.
Ugh.
But now the release schedule is Shang-Chi is coming out in May, which, you know what, honestly kind of hyped that they're putting a brand new series with a new character and a new lead actor in the summer blockbuster spot. You know, the spot that Avengers always got. That's I feel like that's a pretty big deal. Yeah. Eternals is coming out next summer. No, I'm sorry. No, Black Widow's coming out in May. Shang-Chi's coming out in July, which is still a summer blockbuster spot. Then Eternals next November. And then Spider-Man next December, actually. I'm seeing that right now. Wow. They squeezed that in.
All of those dates are going to be delayed due to extant COVID-19 concerns.
I mean, yeah, there's a very good chance of that.
So Disney is putting themselves into a situation where it's going to have been 2 years since they released a Marvel movie in theaters before anyone sees one.
Yeah.
And they're going to still be producing all of their television shows. At some point, they're just going to have to say, "Hey, Black Widow's on the streaming service. Pay us $30." At some point, they're going to have to do that.
I hope so. But then, I said Spider-Man, the third Spider-Man movie in December of 2021. Ooh, the day after my birthday. That's fun. The day after my 28th birthday. I remember being 21 and thinking like, oh man, I'm going to be 25 by the time I watch Captain Marvel, which was the movie I was most looking forward to. Now I'm 26, man. Anyway, Thor: Love and Thunder is now scheduled for February 11th, 2022. And then Doctor Strange is scheduled for March 25th. So we're getting a Doctor Strange and a Thor sequel a month apart from each other. And if that stays, that's going to be great. Because those I think are the two movies I'm most excited for. But I've heard some interesting rumors about the Spider-Man, and I won't talk about them with you, obviously, but people, if anyone wants to know, if anyone wants to look that up, I just suggest looking up Spider-Man Far From Home sequel rumors. It's some crazy stuff.
Did I tell you it's not a rumor, but I saw what I thought was the best delivery on the home premise. So for those of you who are not aware, all three of the well, two of the three, probably the third new Spider-Man movies for the MCU have the word home in the name.
Yeah.
And
Spider-Man
they're probably
Homecoming, Spider-Man
Spider-Man
Far
Far From Home. And in my opinion, the best one I've seen for the new movie so far is that if it is going to be a Sinister Six movie, which is the dream, right?
That is the dream.
You call it Spider-Man Home by Six. Because, he's a teen and is supposed to be home by a certain time. But then also the Sinister Six is in the movie.
That's so good.
Yeah. It's a really good title. I saw fan art that I thought was official because of how good it was of a poster for a movie called Spider-Man Home by Six. And I was like, well, I wish I didn't know the Sinister Six was in this movie. But it wasn't official. But now I'm just like, man, oh man. Because they've already set up such a good Sinister Six setup. And I don't want to spoil any of those movies, but long story short, there's a lot of possibility in the supervillain team known as the Sinister Six. Even though they'd have to introduce multiple Sinister Six members. No, 3. They'd have to introduce 3.
Yeah. Well, because
they'd have to introduce 4. I don't want to spoil the newest movie, but they'd have to introduce 4.
I mean, I'll say the two villains from the 2 Spider-Man movies so far are two of the 6.
Hold on. That's true. Yeah, that's true.
Are 2 of the 6 Sinister Six members, classic Sinister Six members.
Yes, and a third Sinister Six classic member is introduced in one of those 2 movies. Strictly speaking, 2 Sinister Six members other than those 2 are introduced in those 2 movies, but there are 2 Sinister Six members that aren't always included in the team. There are secondary villains in the first Spider-Man movie. There are 2 secondary villains that are both Sinister Six members at some point.
Yeah. I definitely hope we see a Sinister Six movie, because the Amazing Spider-Man movies, which was the movies before Spider-Man came into the Avengers movies, starring Andrew Garfield, with the Amazing Spider-Man in 2012, followed by the Amazing Spider-Man 2 in 2014. Yeah. One of the few superhero movies that's come out in the last 10 years that I haven't seen. Actually, still don't care about seeing it.
Which one?
The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, I've never seen it. I'll never watch that movie.
I don't care. I haven't even seen Amazing Spider-Man more than once. I saw it in theaters and I liked it.
I did not.
Okay.
I liked one thing about it. I liked one thing about it a lot.
Emma Stone as
I thought that Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield had quite a lot of chemistry in that movie.
Yeah. The sequel to that movie was setting up the Sinister Six.
Oh, yeah.
Because the main villain of the second movie was Electro. Who was the Lizard was the villain in the first one, but I don't think they were going to use the Lizard. I'm sure the Lizard's been a member of the Sinister Six in the comics, but
well, they imply Norman Osborn shows up in that movie for a second.
Yeah, is it confirmed to be him? I always believed it was him.
I believe the subtitles of that section of the movie say Norman Osborn.
Oh my god.
Also, even if they don't, doesn't the Lizard say Norman or something like that?
I don't think so, because I thought it was a mystery. The Lizard definitely knows who it is, and he was a Oscorp employee, so he probably knew if it was Norman Osborn.
And then apparently Norman Osborn shows up in the second movie that you and I have not seen.
Does he? I thought he canonically dies.
Yeah, it's in a weird flashback where he says, I started Oscorp because I looked at the world around me and said, we can do better. And we should do better. Einstein said the world cannot be changed without changing our thinking. But change isn't just a slogan. It begins with hard work. Change begins with persistence and commitment. And then he says, they'll turn on you, Spider-Man.
Godspeed, Spider-Man.
It's a reference to the early 2000s.
With the movie Spider-Man, starring Tobey Maguire and Willem Dafoe.
Willem Dafoe is outstanding in that movie.
He is really good.
Think about it, hero.
He's good in everything, but he's especially good as the Green Goblin.
He's a great actor.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about the MCU's biggest movie, The Lighthouse.
We do not have time for that, unfortunately. Well, we need to move on. I think there are 2 big things that I want to get to. The first of which is last summer they confirmed a lot of new TV shows. And we're finally getting some news on them, even though they're not supposed to debut until like 2022.
Like What If?
And we what?
Like Marvel's What If?
No, because we knew about that one. No, I'm talking specifically about the She-Hulk and the Miss Marvel series.
Oh yeah.
Because we finally got castings for those two heroes.
Did we get casting for She-Hulk too?
Yeah, we did. Remember? I'm gonna find out who it is.
Who is playing
Jessica? Nope.
She-Hulk?
Where?
Oh, Tatiana!
Yeah, that's it.
Yes, I
Here,
forgot.
I don't.
Dude, Tatiana Maslany, comedy Bang Bang fan and excellent actor. From those of you who do not know, she plays characters on Orphan Black and plays a lot of other people on a lot of other things. She's great.
Yeah, I don't know her.
An excellent actor.
Yeah, I could take your word for that though, because didn't you say that the character she plays in that, or the characters she plays in that, is like incredibly varied, and she has to play all of them?
Yes. Without saying too much about Orphan Black, Tatiana Maslany has a lot. I haven't watched basically any of it. All I know is I've seen her in other things, and I know what she has to do in that, and everyone says she does a good job of it. She is a great actor, Tatiana Maslany, and she's gonna play
Jennifer Walters.
Yeah.
She-Hulk. Bruce Banner's cousin.
Wait, so Jessica Drew, Jennifer Walters, and
Carol Danvers.
So they all have one connection. Jessica and Jennifer, but then it's Drew and Walters, and then Danvers and Carol. But then Jessica Drew's name is not connected to Carol Danvers' name. It's too bad.
No, it's not. Which is too bad, because they're best friends, and that's actually what I wanted to talk about. Obviously, people would know that I am a huge fan of Captain Marvel. I love that movie. I love Brie Larson's casting as Captain Marvel. I love her in those movies. I love the comics with her. I think she's great. One of my favorite things about her in the comics is her relationships with Jessica Drew, her best friend, who is Spider-Woman. And also, they're also good friends with a lot of other superheroes. But one of the other ones is Jennifer Walters, who is She-Hulk. I want to see all three of them together in a movie. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, because I think Sony owns the rights to Jessica Drew and Spider-Woman, and they might want to use her for their own stuff. I hope that's not the case. I want to see live action Jessica Drew so bad.
Yeah.
But
I think that it's essentially confirmed we're going to get an animated Jessica Drew in the Spider-Verse films, because they're trying to do the female Spider Family characters, the women of the Spider-Verse.
Mm-hmm.
In a that's not what the name of that movie is. We don't know what the name of that movie is.
No, we don't know. It's just called the Spider-Gwen movie.
It's Untitled Spider-Gwen Project. Do we know what the sequel to the actual movie, the mainline sequel of that movie is called? Do we know what that is? The
sequel to Into the Spider-Verse? I don't think we do.
We don't. It's just called Into the Spider-Verse sequel. And then we know that there is the spin-off that is going to be about the women of the Spider-Verse.
Yeah. And so the other character that we just got a casting on is the Miss Marvel casting, who is going to be played by an unknown actress named Iman Vellani, who I think this is her first role, and she got this huge role in a Marvel TV series, at least first major role. And I can't say anything about her other than the fact that she really looks the part. I mean, Miss Marvel's real name is Kamala Khan. She's a Muslim American teenager. A lot of her character deals with the fact that she grew up in New Jersey post 9/11. She's had to deal with a lot of Islamophobia. Thank you. In her life. She's a huge fan of in the comics. I love her because she's adorable. She's a huge superhero fan. She is a huge fan of the Avengers. She loves Captain Marvel. She's just so fun. And she actually has only been around since 2014, and she's already getting a TV show. She's a huge part of the Avengers game that just came out last month.
Yeah.
It's great to see Marvel already doing so much with this character.
Totally.
And so we only have a few more minutes. I'm so excited for those characters. I can't even express it. We have quite a few more minutes left. maybe I should have saved this for the second half, but I feel like it's the bigger news. A bit of bad news in the Marvel Universe front. One of the actors playing one of the major Avengers, Chadwick Boseman, playing Black Panther, he passed away last month from what was it? Colon cancer?
A long battle with cancer.
Yeah, which is very, very, very sad. But one of the things I wanted to talk about, we've talked quite a bit about how they're going to keep going with the movies because of this, because no one knew.
Yeah.
No, like the Ryan Coogler, the director and Chadwick Boseman's friend, didn't even know. And Coogler said that he was until he found out about the news, he was writing the script for Black Panther 2, imagining Chadwick Boseman giving those lines. And now we're never going to see that movie. It's incredibly sad.
Yeah.
But you know, the show must go on.
Yeah. Especially when the show has 25 finished movies and like, but I don't know. There's a lot of ways that they could go with it.
Well, what are some of your thoughts?
So I think that something that you and I have had debates about before is that in the Black Panther universe, the prince's sister Shuri is kind of like she's a smart lady who does a lot of science, and logically would be the next Black Panther, because the Black Panther is kind of okay. In Wakanda, it is within the rights of people of like the distinct sort of tribal houses to challenge the current like king or
ruling
queen
tribe
for the right to the throne, which is predominantly an eschewed right that is presented out of sort of deference to tradition, et cetera, et cetera. And what this means essentially in practice is that Shuri would almost certainly ascend to be Queen of Wakanda without any kind of real opposition, because she's the only person extantly in that line of leadership at this point.
Actually, can I say something real quick that I just thought of?
What?
If so, in Black Panther, the character T'Challa ascends to the throne and becomes king after his father dies. He has to fight someone in combat in order to do that.
Well, no, he wouldn't have had to if nobody challenged him.
But someone did challenge him. Specifically, M'Baku of the Jabari tribe challenges him because he doesn't like the way that T'Challa's family is leading Wakanda forward, in his opinion. And he succeeds. T'Challa wins. T'Challa takes the throne. Blah blah. One of the things I realized, because the movie was on at your house over the weekend, and we saw M'Baku doesn't like the way Shuri kind of doesn't care.
In his words, flouts tradition.
Yeah, because she's a teenager. She's much younger. And M'Baku is at worst anti-hero. I don't even want to call him an anti-hero.
I mean, he isn't in the strictest, like he is with like a blanket. We don't want to spoil those movies. M'Baku becomes one of
an ally.
Yeah, M'Baku becomes an ally. Point is, I don't think that there's a logical universe where M'Baku challenges Shuri at this point.
That's not my point. My point being, like, if Shuri tries to claim the throne, her legitimate claim to the throne, someone might challenge her. Is Shuri trained in combat? She might be. We've seen her fight, but we've only seen her fight with technology, not in any like melee.
Yes, combat. Especially because that trial, like that challenge system explicitly like requires like you're given a weapon, but you're within the framework of like you don't have your powers or your whatever, etc. I mean, I think that the cleanest implication is if Shuri becomes the Black Panther and the Queen of Wakanda,
which has happened in the comics.
That the plot becomes a sort of an attempt to balance tradition with your own frustrations with it, and and attempt to balance a dual set of obligations. Like Shuri is very comfortable in the Marvel Cinematic Universe with being the like science behind Wakanda, like being this huge scientific leader, and not having to be the Black Panther or like the main hero of her nation. Like she
Yes.
seems completely okay with that role. Having to balance
she's
those
the Black
things,
Panther's tech guy.
also the possibility that she might not have Black Panther powers for reasons that would be described by the plot of the movie, means that there might be like a we might have Shuri as like a super technological Black Panther, like
Almost
a
like an Iron Man.
Man type equivalent to the Black Panther, which I think is a really interesting place to go with that. But you know, it's complicated, right?
I mean, I would love to see this happen because you're right. She doesn't. I don't think she wants to be Black Panther. But I think there's an interesting story to be told where that mantle is thrust upon her, and she has to rise to the responsibility. That's a story I would love to hear, at least.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think that like you can do a lot of interesting things with, because instead of it being a rejection of her, like a rejection of any kind of responsibility. So okay, in the 8-sequence structure of filmmaking, or like in the Hero with a Thousand Faces like story wheel, there's a moment in every story where a hero refuses the call to adventure, and then, or almost every story where a hero refuses the call to adventure because of like fear or perception of disruption to the status quo, et cetera, and then eventually has to go on a journey to begin Act 2 of a story, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we would have an interesting sort of variant on that, where a lot of like, instead of it being that Shuri is not like, yeah, there would be, I think on some level, maybe she'll be like, you know, I'm not cut out to do this. I already had a good thing going or whatever. But part of it is, I think, that Shuri has an extant societal obligation where she serves an extremely necessary function. So her being this like huge scientific leader and innovator, and that itself causing problems with her attempts to be a good leader and to be the Black Panther, would, I think, be an inherently interesting setup, because we know that there is this like, that she feels a sense of obligation to a different thing, that there is another thing that she already does that is important for the group, you know?
Yeah.
And trying to balance 3 obligations, 2 of which she never asked, and which were in mourning for, while in mourning for her brother, because they're gonna have to make him die in the movies.
Yeah. Well, because that's the thing. They're not going to replace.
They can't
Chadwick
recast
Boseman.
him.
It would be insensitive, honestly. Like he was the first live action actor to portray that character. That character has huge cultural significance now.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to see him replaced until, like, 20 years from now, when we get some form of reboot on these movies and all the Avengers are there from the start. Hopefully that's my hope, but that's a long ways off. No matter what they do. We'll see what happens. Like, there's a lot of other things that they might do. Maybe they will recast him. I hope not, but we'll see.
Hopefully they don't use the no, they won't. I'm not even gonna say it out loud.
No, what? Go ahead.
The technology to like put him in the movie that they've done in other things.
Oh yeah, no, hopefully not. That would be,
I think it would be morally wrong, but I'm not gonna be the one saying it necessarily here.
Yeah, that's how they did Star Wars, the latest Star Wars movie.
Yeah, but at least in that there was like, she had like recorded things for the movies. I don't know.
It's still
like
it's like looking at a ghost. It's like,
there's other examples. Right there, it's not like, I don't think it. Without being like too, I don't want to even say this, without being too like morbid about it, I feel like if your estate didn't say, go ahead and keep using my image in these things, there should be like no, unless like that was his dream, there should be no hesitation to not do that. Like, that should not even be something that is up for debate.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Like I think if there's
honestly
something
agree.
different,
I unfortunately, Alex, we do gotta wrap it up.
sorry, I keep thinking about Rogue One. I was going to talk about Rogue One.
Well,
but,
that's a different story.
but it,
So
just because,
thank you,
yeah,
Alex. I'm sorry we have to be over.
I
I'm
know.
sorry. We thank you so much for being on. Tune in on Wednesday for Sports Talk and another HCAM Hangout hour. Goodbye, everyone.